So I've had the first addition to my revelation, which you can see in the linked video to this short. That being, Jesus is not how I perceived him initially to be. I think Jesus is typically perceived by people to be coming from man, but gifted by this individual God being to have God's powers. And that is actually a heresy. Some believe it as like, he is God, but he's like, he came out as a human naturally. There's a lot of ways to interpret it, but I feel like based on my interpretation, which you can find out about in the video below, it's pretty complicated. It's different. And I believe Jesus is just his human form, God's human form. And I interpret it less as, Jesus, you are this amazing man with God in you, and more now as, Jesus, you are God. And I interpret Jesus more directly as God, not just this man who happens to be God as well, who is sinless, but rather as God choosing to come down as a human and live a human life and make himself weak to the human weaknesses for us because of his love and bear the weight of our sins. So with this interpretation that I have, I now see Jesus as God more so than just as Jesus. It's a pretty interesting shift. So it's really hard to describe, honestly, if you haven't seen the video, but yeah. Now I don't see Jesus as just this guy who happens to be God, who's really cool and sinless. I see him as God, and if I were to address him, I would address him as God, just as his human form, that being Jesus.